Here's the game plan today. I'm going to do my July wrap up. I read quite a bit of books in July. It is a longer month, but I still read a lot. And probably it's my birthday month, makes me excited. I love reading, so I kind of did what I want. A little bit. And I'm going to go through the books. I did read a lot of standalone books, but I did read like a series, which destroyed. I failed. I completely failed at the reading rush at the end of the month. I had this great TBR. I read about half of 2 or 3 of them, and I put them down because I was in the middle of a series. So I finished the series. I think I finished the last book on the first day of August. So too bad you won't get the whole series, but I read this really simple, cute little series. So I'm going to leave those to the end because there's quite a lot of them. And again, I'm going to go on to the standalones. So the very first standalone was Bloodwitch, which I took forever to read. And it was great. And I shouldn't say it was great like off the bat. But anyways, I read Threadwitch and I read Sightwitch. Bloodwitch is the third in a series, and it is about these lands. I think the author told she was fascinated by the Ottoman Empire and the people that the countries that didn't get picked up by the Ottoman Empire. You know how Roman Empire took over everywhere, but then there's these tiny little countries like Ireland. Ireland's one of them that didn't get shoved into the Roman Empire, Ottoman Empire, whatever have it. But she mixes fantasy in it, and there's all these kinds of witch. There's Wind Witch, Thread Witch, Blood Witches, all these different kind of witches, and she does a really incredible job of telling the story and having all these witches. So we're on to the third book, which is the Blood Witch. So the Blood Witch is a guy named Adwin, and there's so many characters in the story. Let me read them off for you. There's Adwin, there's Isolde, there's Al, there's Sophie, there's Merrick, there's Steeks, there's Vanis, Bodwin, I think, Vivia, and the Caharwen. And the only reason I know how to pronounce any of these is because I listened to the audiobooks for most of these. And yeah, that's the only reason, or else I would not know how to pronounce most of them, and I probably still mispronounce some of them. Anyways, there's a lot of characters, a lot of POVs going on in this. The beginning story started out with the Thread Witch, but by Blood Witch, we've got plots and subplots and POVs, and there's a lot going on. So this one, the other two, Sight Witch and Thread Witch, I read like that, like lickety split. And for some reason, something happened in this book where I could not get through it, and it took me forever to read. I could not physically pick it up and read it. I once checked out the book and I could not read it. I had to go back and wait for an audiobook to come around again, and it still took me a long time to get through it all. Although the Blood Witch is my favorite character in here. Aldwin is my favorite character in the series, and I would think I would like his book the most, but there was so much going on in this book, and I don't want to give it all away because you can't really know what's going on in this book unless you've read the other two, but there's a lot of plots and subplots. And so I think what happened with the writing in this book, or maybe this is what the writer was going for, but what happened was she started out with these fantastic characters. All her characters are really memorable and really great and different. I do love a lot of things about these books, and I love that the characters come across cross-culturally, and it's never a thing. They are different, they are from different lands, they are different witches, but somehow they remarkably get along, they work together. And love is a big proponent in this book. It is very slow burn in these books, very slow burn, very angsty. And on top of it, it's never a forced thing. It's never because of situational hazards or money hazards, or you're here and this is what your choice is, or the king's pushing you to marry somebody. None of those situations really arrive in these books, which I really, really appreciate when characters get together, because characters have personalities that connect, right? And they have stuff going on in their life that connect, and nothing is forcing them. So I really, really appreciate that. As a romance lover, I absolutely love that. Couldn't thank it enough. But in this particular book, I feel like the story kept expanding and expanding, and all this stuff is going on, and she is a very fast-paced writer. What I mean by that is there's not a lot of lag in the story. There's not a lot of sections where you get to know the characters a little bit more. It's more this happened, and this happened. So there's a lot more of that, and I feel like the universe kept expanding, and you get all these cool characters, and the characters kept expanding, and all of a sudden I'm way out to here, and it's hard at this point for me now to be I want to keep reading this story and this story and this story and this story and this story. I feel like she really, in the next book, if she doesn't start coming back around, where the characters are around each other more and their plots are together more, and if she doesn't do that, she's about to lose me. She's developed a really good world, but it's really, really big now. And I think that's why it took me so long to read. So out of the three, this was definitely my least favorite, even though he's my favorite. Dwayne does have some development in this story. I really, really liked that. He is this guy who's like perpetually stuck in what he was and what he used to be. And it's like a huge like life shift for him. To think outside of that box. So I really like that about Dwayne, and I really like Isolde for him. I love Isolde and Dwayne. I like them together. So yeah, there was a lot going on in this book. I didn't give you guys a lot of what was going on, but there was a lot of plots and subplots, and there's guys, the Wind Witch is like fighting his old dead captain, and just there's all this stuff and these other people. The main story, I guess if I did the main story, it's like they're trying to, the Carwyn are trying to find these pools of water that are healing and make them restore their healing powers, magic. Maybe that sort of control. I think that was the main overarching plot, but I'm not sure because like I said, there are little ones. And there's a lot of queens. There's a lot of people who are ruling their women, which is fun. It's great. It's amazing. And yeah, so, I mean, this one you really got to go back. You got to read them. You got to read the other ones. If you're into fantasy, I think you would enjoy them. The next book I read, I really, really liked, and I read it in one sitting. And if you guys are into standalones, personally, I put this one in my top 10 standalones, which ended up being a 12/14-ish. I don't really know. It got over top 10. Like I said in it, I could go on and on about standalones and have probably a list of 100. I could keep doing like 5 a week or something. I don't know. But I absolutely loved this book, and it was fresh in my mind, so it got put in there. And it might have been like a quick think thing, but that's what happened. So, still don't worry about Alex. You don't know what's going on. She's really scared. You know she used to be a chemist of some sort, maybe. But she's got this routine going on, a fast-paced life where she moves around because she doesn't want to get caught. She doesn't want to get killed. People are after her. You're not sure what's going on with her life or what happened. But I love that Stephenie Meyer didn't dump it all. I didn't just receive it all in the beginning. It is organically more given out through the book. And Stephenie Meyer switched up a lot of her writing style in this book. I think... From what I I think it was third-person narrative, which she usually is a first-person narrative writer. If you know anything about Stephenie Meyer, if you've read the Twilight series, which who hasn't at this point, but she's a really gripping writer. Even though this is a heavier book, normally this kind of book would take me a while to get through, detective books, and they do take me a while. I don't know why. I know thrillers are supposed to read fast, but for some reason with me, they do take me a while. This one I read in like one sitting. Like, it was so quick paced for me and fast, and I just kept wanting to read it. Absolutely loved it in the end. Anyways, another guy comes along, Kevin, and Kevin's, well, I don't want to give it away. Kevin and Daniel come along at one point. Some guys in Navy SEAL, okay, they both have targets on their back. They all got to work together. That's the plot of the story. You have to figure out why she has targets on her back, what she used to do as a chemist. You find out pretty soon on, and it's kind of scary and gripping, and like, these aren't characters you will really fall in love with right away. But the story is so gripping, and it's so good, and it is faster paced, and there's these adorable dogs. You'll love it. But yeah, it's a good thriller. If you haven't checked it out, at first I was like, that's out everywhere because it's Stephenie Meyer. But then it kept sitting on the shelves, and and I was like, people must really like this. And so finally, yeah, I picked it up. I read it. I was like, I get it. I don't know why people don't talk about it more. I haven't heard that much about it. But, yeah, I really liked it. Obviously, I put it in my top 10, 12-ish standalones. So, yeah, it was really fun. The next book I read was The Royals by Rachel Hawkins. And this book, I think... It changed names. I'm not sure if this one is Prince Charming or if it's the other one. needless to say, it's about a young girl who's 16 years old. Her name is Daisy, and she is kind of in like a stuck moment thing where her life is going to change because her sister is marrying a prince, the Prince of Scotland. This comes out right away in the story, and it's adding these complications in her life. So what happens is she ends up in Scotland with her sister. Her sister's about to get married, and there's the younger prince who she meets, and he has a lot of difficulties and problems. And then she gets paired off with this other guy named Miles, and Miles is supposed to help her become royal, or be appropriate to be around the royals at least, and not have scandals or anything like that break out. It is a cute little romance. There's nothing deep in this. I mean, not deep, but there's nothing like heavy or drawn. It doesn't, nothing to block or stop the reader. It's just a really quick, easy read. For me, it was right down the middle. It was okay. I don't think I'll go on to the second story unless a lot of people are like, you gotta really read it, because this was renamed, and there's 2 companion novels now. But I don't know. It was just an okay read for me. Wasn't my favorite, but it was okay. I'm glad. I'm not mad I read it by any means. I don't think it wasted my time. And the next one I really liked, so there's 2 more. But the next one I really, really liked, and it was The Simple Wild, and it intrigued me because they said it's about Alaska, and I really liked The Great Alone, and I'd love to go to Alaska one day, and I grew up in really harsh winter places, okay? So I grew up in the 9 to 10 month winter places. I know what it's like to have winter for that long. It's a little bit depressing, and it was windy there, so it was depressing all the way around. But there are very, very beautiful parts, right? The landscaping is beautiful. There's far less people who live in that kind of cold weather. So you deal with so much less people. You can breathe. It's literally breathtaking because you can breathe. You never think about air until you go somewhere really polluted, or you go somewhere where it's super, super clean. And the cleanest air in the world is like on mountain air that's crisp and clean. And not a busy mountain, not Colorado. Let's get real. But you still get some really crisp, fresh air, even in Colorado, though. And so, yeah, this intrigued me just because they said the words Alaska out in the wild. So this is about a young girl named Kala. She's 24 now, and she has lived most of her life without her father. Her mother took her away when she was about 2 years old and could not handle the Alaskan style. I get it. It's not for everyone. So Kala shows up on the scene because she gets a worried phone call from a friend that her dad is got a serious type of cancer. So she shows up on the scene in Alaska, and she's very urbanized. And some people may hate this, but I don't mind it because I've lived on both sides. I get it. I get the people who don't get people who are urban, and people who are urban who don't get them. And I get both sides. I like both sides. I get the conveniences of cities and transportation, which is one thing. She gets there and she can't even drive. And so she shows up, and there's a man there, and he's a flyer for his dad. Her dad is a flyer. There's always these important needs going on in these communities, that people need drugs, or they need help, or they need a doctor, or they need a vet. And these people fly to these communities that you basically cannot drive by, in Alaska at least. So her dad's job is very vital and important to the society around him, and has kept him busy, and she has no relationship, never met her dad, and she shows up on the scene, and then there's this grumpy airplane pilot with her, and she doesn't know what his shtick is, but he really doesn't appreciate that she's a city girl, basically. So, even though both of the main characters in the hero and the heroine, are not really people you really love, because they're kind of annoying. Like, she's an Instagram girl, which is fine. I mean, none of it's really that annoying if you have been in both sides of this, I think, and you recognize that. But to me, they're not those outright characters, which is one of the reasons I love the story, is when you have outright characters that you don't just love. People have flaws, you get it. And so it's a mix of a story about her getting to know her father, what's going on with his disease, his sickness, and of course, a bit of a romance story. Definitely a hate to love trope if you love those. It isn't all come out right away. It isn't physical like right away or anything like that. It is a true like storytelling on a normal progression in a normal person's life. And that's one part I really, really enjoyed. I love that it was set in Alaska. Makes it all the more fun. And I really liked it. It was definitely about a community that I've never read about, like people flying around to like little reservations of people and stuff. I've never really read about that. I've been around airplanes, but like small airplanes and people. doing things, but never like in harsh climates like that. So that was really fun. It was a unique story. I really loved it. It makes me want to read more of her books. And I think she has one coming out this like August 6th. So it's coming out like today. Yeah. So I'm going to go check that one out. And hopefully I like it as well. But it was like an insta love. And I was like, I could definitely read more of this writer. I would definitely check it out. Yeah. So if you like those romances, let's see. Let's do the other one. Oh yeah, so the other one is the one book I accomplished for Reading Rush. So I failed, right? I failed at my TBR and Reading Rush. I underestimated the busy week I had that week, and I did not do that much reading. But the one book I did read was on my list, and it was Mr. Darcy's a Vampyre, and it's by Amanda Grange. I did end up getting 2 badges, so I didn't completely fail. I'm gonna admit, I got a purple book, and I got the one where the non-human badge. So I read this one. It's been on my TBR of Pride and Prejudice readings. I throw in these all the time because I love Pride and Prejudice. It's one thing I always like to read. It's one thing it's easy for me to read. I know the story. I can go back to it. Anyways, this starts off right on their honeymoon. So the characters are not changing the books. The setting is not changing this book. It's not really a retelling, but it's a takeoff after their honeymoon. What happened to Darcy and Elizabeth? Well, turns out Darcy's a vampire because it says it on the front cover, right? So you don't really know what's going on in this book. You know what's going on the whole time, but the author writes it as you don't know what's going on. So that's a little bit frustrating because the whole time you're like, wake up, Elizabeth. There's something weird about your husband. You're on this honeymoon and he won't even come near you or touch you. You know, so you're meeting all these mysterious people. Is this my favorite afterwards retelling? Let's cut to the chase. No. Will I keep this on my bookshelves? I don't know yet because I don't truly know how I feel about it. But it was okay. If you're really into Pride and Prejudice retellings, go ahead and check it out. If you're really into vampires and you liked Pride and Prejudice, go ahead and check it out. But it's not the one I would recommend. It was mediocre down the line. I'm not sure. It took a long time for her. It took a long time of the prep work. Like 90% of this book is the prep work of what the title is about, okay? Of him actually being a vampire. So it's a bit frustrating. It was a bit predictable. It was a bit drawn out. I just wanted more, I guess, out of the book overall. Some more excitement, more something. There's a little bit of adventure, a little bit of misdirection in it, but yeah, not enough. Not enough. It's okay. All right. So this year I have really got hooked on Rachel Gibson. I started out with a book I didn't like, and then I started reading other ones and I really like them. So I've learned with Rachel Gibson. Sometimes I really like her stories, sometimes I don't. But I know this. They're easy to swallow. They're really easy to read. They're romances. They're cute. They're little fluff pieces. They're nothing hard. I can read them really, really quickly and really, really shortly. And so yeah, I like all those things about it. And so I decided, if I'm going to start another series of hers or anything, I'm going to start from the beginning and read them all because they get better. The more you know those characters, and those characters are brought up in other books, it makes you a little happier about the books, okay? And maybe if you read the book by itself, you maybe wouldn't be. But you get where I'm going? You get where I'm going. So I started the Chinook books and I was like, I'm just going to read like 1 or 2 this month. And no, I flew through them all. Chinooks is an ice hockey team she wrote a romance around. And I had an inkling towards this because one of the ice hockey players ends up down in one of the Texas stories. One of the Texas stories I have read all the way through, and I did a review on it. I'll post it down below if you really want to hear about it. Anyways, these are mass market paperback romances, so you know what we're getting into. So the first one is this one, simply Irresistible. And this is the anniversary edition, apparently. I checked out from the library. This one is a really simple story. They're all really simple stories. I'm not going to lie. This one is a girl. She's set up to marry a man. She's like that girl that's been told she's not good enough, not smart enough her whole life. And she sets up to marry this man who's older. And he's just really a nice, genuinely nice man to her and really nice. And he's promised her to be, kind of set up in her life for the first time. So she kind of grabs at this. But then the opening scene, she's running away from it. She's not going to marry her fiance, this older man who's like 40 years older, 50 years older than her. And she ends up in a car with a young hockey player. This man who she was going to marry, Mr. Fuller, is the owner of the ice hockey team. So this young hockey player quickly realizes that this weird wedding dress that he thought was just a random weird dress, because she's not dressed in a typical wedding dress like this, like it shows in the picture. She's just dressed in this weird pink ensemble that her older fiance had picked out. Anyways, so once he quickly learns that it's his owner, he wants nothing to do with her, because at first he's really intrigued. He's like, I'm gonna have a great time, this girl's really pretty, she's really nice. And then he quickly learns that it's his boss's owner, but they still go on with it. They still make a little bit of a mistake with it. They still go on with the relationship, even though neither one of them are really into it, I guess. And it's just a harder to believe book, because she supposedly is like in love with him after spending 1 or 2 nights with the guy. It results out in a pregnancy. She keeps the pregnancy hidden. And for me in this book, it wasn't good reasons to keep a pregnancy hidden from a man. And so this is one of those stories where that all happens in the first scene, and the second scene, your like second chapter, it's picking up and he's finding out he has a 7-year-old daughter or whatever. So there's a lot of anger in the book, a lot of hate in the book. The man has quite a lot of maturity and growing up to grow through. She has grown up a ton, which I do appreciate. She grows up a ton in this book and really comes into her own and knows what kind of a power she has, and she creates her own business and her own job and all this stuff. So I did really like that part of the book, but it's just not one of my favorites for me. One of the middle of the road ones. One of the middle of the road. So Simply Irresistible, Georgina. Yeah. But for all that going for it too, once it gets into the main story, there weren't enough twists and shocks. There wasn't enough dilemma for me. So that's why I ended up middle of the road. Okay. I don't really remember what all order these go in. I think the next one is CJ and Score. So CJ and Score was actually probably my favorite out of this series, and a lot of people's I hear favorite. I don't like the title. But this is a completely different story. It is about a girl who writes a female columnist article, and she really loves what I do. A little bit like Sex and the City, and she gets thrown into reporting for the Chinooks because the guy's out of town or something. She's got to cover for the Chinooks hockey team. She covers from the Chinooks hockey team. There's every guy on the team apparently is super superstitious. They don't like a woman traveling with them. And then there's another guy on the team, that they have that instant kind of chemistry, but they don't. Say negative about this book is Luke, the main hero of the book, I guess, and the heroine. The heroine is a nice, lovely lady who's worked really hard, and she takes her career very seriously. And even though sports aren't her thing, she tries to learn the most about it and tries to be professional. But Luke is kind of a womanizer, and he has a problem with reporters because they've reported on him in the past, and he doesn't like everything they said, and a lot of it he doesn't believe is real. And he's kind of one of those guys I like this kind of woman, blah, blah, blah. And she's the opposite of that. So I feel like the book goes into too much detail with that. But other than that, this book does take a lot longer than the other books, romantic-wise. And it's more of a believable romance. And because there's a lot the couple has to kind of go through in order to actually connect. Because she's being very professional, and he is she's not my type, and I don't really want to hear what if she's bad luck kind of moment. So the story does take a little bit more longer romantically, which is usually when I like Rachel Gibson books, is when it's actually set up longer. And not that I love slow burn or instant love or blah blah blah, but I feel like there's just more growth in the characters and that their romance has more growth. Yeah, so that was that one. So the next one is The Trouble with Valentine's Day. I don't have this one. I think I read it borrowed it on the e-library. Anyways, this one was cute. It was set off differently. So The Trouble with Valentine's Day is set off in Gospel, Idaho. So I think it's part of one of her other kind of series, which I haven't read yet. And so it is about a hockey player who has gotten out of the game in ice hockey. He owns his own business now. It's like a sporting goods zone. And then there's a girl who comes along, and she used to be a detective, and she gets this creepy detective thing where she was helping a guy, and then he ends up going and killing his family, and she's just kind of at a shocked moment in life. So she's going to go back and help her family member who lost his wife 2 years ago. And so she's like, I think you need my help. And he's like, no, I really don't. you know, move on. But she's there. She's helping him with his little store. Across the street is Rob's sporting goods store. So this one was also pretty good. Rob, though, the only thing with this one is why I didn't rank as high as CJ's score is Rob was like, he was previously married. He married a girl because she got pregnant. They weren't really in love, supposedly, and then she was difficult to deal with, and then his kid. So he lives apart from his kid to get his mind right, I feel like. And to me, that's really selfish. And he previously cheated on his wife and stuff. So to me, I feel like Rob has done a lot of growing on his own before you enter the book, but then I feel like he still needs more growing up, and because the author just assumes that he did it all before, that it's not needed in the story, and I feel like I wish he had more, you know, more maturity of love that grew through the book. But this book was easier. It was one of my more favorites of them, and yeah, I mean, I didn't love the series. I liked the Texas series, I think, a little bit more than this series, but I know a lot of people really love it, and I know a lot of people think it's their favorite because they like hockey. I like hockey too. It's really fun. Really fun to read about. And she does use, and through all these Chinooks books, she does use real teams and real players to throw it all in. So it's quite fun, and you learn little rules about hockey and stuff if you didn't know them. One is True Love and Other Disasters. This one is another one that looks like this with a wedding. There's like a lot of hers that have wedding dresses on. Okay, so Faith ends up, this is set quite a bit later than this original one, but there's a girl named Faith who ends up marrying the owner, the Duffy, the old guy, and Faith is basically marries him, and he just wants a best friend and somebody to look good on his arm. He doesn't want a real marriage. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, so Faith, this man has died. He's just died, and Faith steps in, becomes the owner because she was his wife, and people are really critical of her, and she used to be a former playmate. And she used to be a stripper, I believe, in Las Vegas. So people are really, really critical of her. She doesn't know anything about hockey. She's the owner of the hockey team. They think it's a disaster. They want her to sell. They push her to sell. And then there's another man who has just stepped into this arena of this hockey team. And this hockey team has been doing really, really well for years. And it's on the verge of winning the Stanley Cup. And this guy has just stepped in because their main captain got really, really injured and hurt. So his name is Ty. So Faith and Ty kind of are brought together, I think, a little bit because they're both newbies-ish to this particular organization. Ty is a new captain. He's really good. He's aggressive. He's worked for this his whole life. He has this thing where his dad was famous in hockey, so he wants to prove his dad better. Anyways, Faith ends up getting a lot of help from somebody she hires from the outside. She really puts it all in there and learns about the hockey team and changes not only Ty's mind, but, you know, the team's mind, and that's where the story goes. That's where it's all developed. It's really easy. It's really cute. And, yeah, what's my favorite? Middle Road. And then the next one was Any Man in Mine. You hear about Sam LeClaire in her other books. I have a feeling this was a favorite of the author. And then you hear about Sam LeClaire in these books. All of these books, I think you hear about Sam. Sam is a Playa. Sam is a Playa. So, Sam is a player, and he's fully into the hockey and what it gives to him and what being a pro athlete gives to him, and he ends up marrying a random girl in Vegas, and she ends up pregnant, and he divorces her and runs away immediately. So, before he knows she's pregnant, but a month later she finds out she's pregnant. So she does tell Sam about it immediately. They grow up and they live in Seattle with him, near him, and he's part of the kid's life. But there comes a point where they just can't take anymore. They're fighting all the time, and the kid's really young, 2 or 3, I think, and they break it off, and they deal with everything through third parties. And then there comes a point again, comes around, where she is, she had a lot going on in her life before this, before she had met Sam. There was, like, deaths and stuff in her family, so she was on vacation when she met him. So she's a lot more of a mature character. She has developed a business and everything, and she really is the main caretaker of their son. And I think it's a son. I don't know if it was a son or not. I don't really remember. But no, it's definitely their son. And she, like, there comes a point where they run into each other again, and it's not like into love by any means, and it's his ex-wife and her ex-husband and stuff, and they don't get along on how to raise him, but she comes to a point where she's just like, you're not really a father, you're not really around, he's just like a sidekick to you and stuff. So he has changed a lot in his life and has gotten to different places in his life, and he decides that he wants to spend a lot more time with his son. So that's where the story and the relationship starts, is mostly about him and his son, which I do appreciate and really liked. This one was a little higher than mediocre than the other ones. There's quite a few mediocres, but I like Jane's score, and this one is probably right up there with it. Because you hear a lot about Sam, I've heard a lot about him before, just kind of like what that meant, made him tick and everything. And then the last one I read in August, this is the second to last book, is Nothing But Trouble. I don't know why I just closed that, because I don't know these people's names or anything. Chelsea Ross. Okay, and Mark. So Chelsea was an actress, and she's up in Seattle, and she gets put on this assistant job because her sister works for the Chinooks organization, and they're at ends meet with this guy named Mark. Mark was the guy who I just told you about, and he was the captain that got injured, and he almost died, and his whole life has changed now, and it's not about hockey, it's just about going to therapy, and apparently he's really rough on the nurses that the Chinooks organization sends to him. So they send along this girl who used to be a personal assistant in Hollywood, tried to make it in Hollywood for 10 years. She thinks it has something to do with the way she looks, so she's kind of thinking about changing that stuff. But she's up there just like on a hiatus. And she runs into this man. He's incredibly difficult. And she's his personal assistant, but she breaks through to him, of course. It's a romance book. It's about him moving on from hockey and where he's going to go in his life, and it's about her reevaluating her dreams in life and where she's going to go. So this one was also one of my more favorites of this series. Like I said, this wasn't my favorite series. I think The Love at Texas I liked more. I think those ones are earlier rights, and I think she's just become a better author. These ones were not bad though. They're easy, simple, like candy reads, so easy to read. If you're in a really romance read, I would definitely recommend her overall. But those are all the books I read in July. And if you guys hung in there until now, please subscribe below. I do wrap-ups every month, and I'll talk about all the books I've read, and maybe intrigue you to read some of those books. And I also do like top 10s and top 5 lists. And I do mini book reviews. So if you're thinking about reading a book, I also do those, so you don't have to go through and listen to my whole wrap up, and you can just click on the book, decide. But yeah, those are all the things I do with books, and I will see you guys in the next time. See you guys next time. Bye.